Don't spend time thinking about, man, I'm not AI native, I'm going to fail. Like, that's just not accurate. You can learn how to use AI both in your product and maybe also more importantly, across your organization.
Welcome to the SaaS Revolution Show, a podcast by SaaStock. Here we interview SaaS founders from around the world who've been there and done that, as they share the ins and outs of how they built their businesses, their operations, their path to securing investment, and more. Our mission with the podcast is to help you, the founder, learn how to scale your SaaS, maintain your well-being, and navigate the complexities of this ever-changing industry. I'm your host, Alex Theuma, and together we'll explore the good, the bad, and the ugly in the journey to SaaS success. Meetings at events suck. We've changed that with Meetup. Coming to SaaS.USA this April, Meetup is a one-to-one meetings program that'll deliver over 12,000 pre-scheduled 15-minute conversations with the partners, customers, peers, and investors who can move your business forward. No more wasted time, just purposeful meetings with exactly who you need to meet. Register by March 20th to secure your place at the AI and B2B software industry's largest meetings event. Find out more at saas.usa.com/meetup. Welcome back to the SaaS Revolution Show. I am your host, Alex Theuma, CEO, founder of SaaStock, also general partner at Back Future Ventures. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Nick Turner, who is the CEO at Dreamdata, joining me all the way from New Jersey. How are you doing, Nick?
Good. Thanks, Alex.
Yeah, good to have you on the podcast, Nick. Actually, you know, the dates that you announced the Series B for Dreamdata was actually the same dates as SaaStock Europe. A coincidence, I'm sure. Many fundraising announcements around that time, but I'm sure yours was a coincidence. But congrats on that. I think a sizable, Series B, 55 million. Tell us a little bit about maybe that journey from A to B, how long that take, what were the kind of the milestones? Had they shifted in this, I guess, kind of AI era that we're in and the metrics that VCs are looking for growth within companies?
Thank you very much. I think we were very fortunate. We had a very good run from Series A to Series B. I think the Series A was, I joined after, it was maybe late 22 is when we did it. And so I think that was a, roughly like, I think 10 million funding round. And so, I would say that not a lot of our metrics have changed. I think obviously there's a lot of parts to how you pitch. And I will say this was my first time leading a funding round. I participated as basically a supporting staff, to someone doing a funding round. This was my first time. And I think, so I didn't really know what was right or wrong to do. I was fortunate to have a lot of good guidance from board members and from our CFO, Peter. He and I had a very long summer and spoke to a lot of different investors. And that was just such a great learning experience. But, I think the same things are true, but there's a lot more around. Everybody wants to know, what are you doing with AI? And I would say especially, you dealt with a narrative of people saying, hey, are you AI native? And are you what they call like legacy SaaS? And I think a lot of interesting conversations around that, especially for us. We were founded in 2018. And so inherently, you can't say that you're an AI native company. And I should also say, when people say AI, they really think generative AI, LLMs, and what are you doing in AI? AI as a whole has been around for a very long time, and we've been using it in our platform for a long time as well. So that was a huge kind of topic of conversations every time, is just like you mentioned, what are you doing in the AI space and how are you adapting to the new environment? So that came up quite a bit. But the metrics, I mean, look, depending on the type of investor you're looking at, you've got your kind of pure VC, you got your growth equity, you have even like private equity and things like that. And I think every one of them has different like things that they want to see. And so in a pure VC world, they want to know, well, how are you going to grow at 4x next year? things like that, and they might care less about retention. In a like growth equity world, growth rates are maybe a little bit lower. They're less concerned about that. They really want to know how are your retention rates. That was a key discussion. And not that VCs don't, pure VCs don't care about that, but I think that it comes up more often as you move on the scale of pure VC going up to like private equity. The other thing I'll say that maybe I did, maybe it was wrong. Again, like I said earlier, I don't know, but I have a very strong belief around what you focus on when it comes to retention in the early stages of company. Everyone talks about net revenue retention, and I actually would prefer to focus on something called gross dollar, which doesn't take into account upsell. And the reason for that is that net revenue is what you would just call a composite metric. It's made of two things, and when you're looking at a metric that's made of two things, it's very easy to hide. It's very easy to hide a problem. And often if you're not focusing on gross dollar, the problem that you're hiding is that you're not focusing on your ICP. So that means that you can kind of sign any deal that you want just in the name of growth, right? And if you do that, then you end up with churn problems down the road. So that was one of the things I did when I joined the business. I immediately kind of refocused this on a gross dollar retention metric because I wanted us to hone in on an ICP. And then make sure that we could improve that gross dollar retention. I'll stop for a second because I might be getting too into the weeds, but that's
into the weeds is good. Do you think that focus was something that you brought from I guess the CRO position into the CEO and that sort of like mindset?
I think so. And just to be clear, I took the CEO seat 6 months ago. So when I joined the business, it was CRO, and that's kind of when I made that change. But I still believe in that change. And I think every, once you get to a certain point, it's different for every company. You can't say, hey, when you hit 1.5 million ARR, you should do X. You can't say that. But you need to have the feel for when do I really need to weed out the companies that just aren't right for us? And I felt at the time was kind of right when I joined the company. Said, let's make this change now. So we know that we're focusing on good customers and we're going to pick up our retention rate.
Maybe for the next question, you can just share a little bit for the audience about what Dreamdata is and does, and then answer the question to maybe what the VCs asked you in that funding round as to what are you doing around AI? Because as you said, like started in 2018, so we call you like maybe native B2B software, native B2B SaaS. And there would need, whilst you've got AI within the platform, I'm sure over the last couple of years there has been some, internal movement within the company and the product to become more like AI first, not necessarily AI native.
Yeah. So look, we're a B2B, and that I should say B2B2B. We tell customers if you don't have a CRM, we're probably not a good fit for you. And so we do attribution and activation, and that's effectively like marketing measurement. And then having the ability to say, okay, I've measured this, and I know that this channel or this campaign or this ad is working very well. This one is working very poorly. I can reallocate my budget to the one that's working well. And so our goal is to help marketers kind of orchestrate their entire all of their marketing budget in one place. So often, I've been in MarTech for 20 years. I've run marketing teams, though I grew up in sales. And I think the core thing that you see in MarTech, there are 18,000. This is this guy, Scott Brink, who writes about this. He's done the MarTech map for years. And there's 18,000 different apps. Marketing is a very busy space. And what people typically have is you'll have an SEO person has their own platform, paid search has their own platform, social media, organic social media, events, like field marketing, all of that. And they all live in silos. And so on average, our customers are connecting 12 different systems to us to figure out, what's the actual ROI on each and trying to connect it to actual revenue. And that can also be the holy grail for marketing, trying to make sure, hey, what I'm doing in brand is working, what I'm doing in demand is working, and it's helping support revenue for the company. So that's effectively what we do. To do that well is difficult. I think we tell customers, look, the only thing worse than no attribution is bad attribution, and because you're going to make very bad mistakes, and people's jobs are on the line for that type of stuff. And so we spent a ton of time on building a very effective data model. And that's not just around data collection, that's tracking, and that's also how you build the model and access the data to make sure that you're telling an accurate story to your team. So half of our product team are data scientists, and we always, Mikkel, he's the lead of data science team. He's got a PhD in physics, smartest guy in Copenhagen, I think, if not broader. But he is, look, we deliver facts to our customers. And that's very important for marketers, that you're delivering facts, because you want to make sure you tell your CEO, your CRO, or your board, hey, these are the numbers that we delivered, and here's how I can prove out what that is. And so if you then fast forward to your second part of the question in terms of, well, what did you tell VCs about AI? And I will say that generative AI, like a non-deterministic system, layering that over a complex data model is very dangerous. AI is, believes that it's incredibly smart, and a lot of times it is, but sometimes it's not, and sometimes it's confidently wrong. And if you're not focusing on how that the generative AI, let's just call it like an AI agent, can access that data, you get real problems. And so over the summer, Salesforce published a study around their agents, and I was quite surprised that they did this. They did it in conjunction with a kind of a third party researcher. They said that their agents were failing 40 to 70% of the time. Now, look, that is not that is not software. That is a roulette table. And that is not something that you want to put in the hands of someone that's trying to produce accurate numbers. And so very often Gen AI and numbers are very difficult to mix together. They're getting better. And so there's a lot of work that you have to do to make sure that how agents are working with data is effective and it's not going to cost you your job. And so there's this idea, I'll go back to Scott, around a system of context. And what's happening is developing a system of context that allows agents to effectively utilize the data within your go-to-market. And that's part of what we're doing. We're of course we have an agent now. We're working on several other agents, but I think the core thing when I went to market, I always tell this. I don't know if it's funny, but I think I don't know how to speak French. I might never actually, because I used to work for a French company, and they as soon as I joined the company, our CEO Adrian said, "Okay, we're all now speaking English because we have our first American on board." And there went all the work I did on learning French. But so I'll never be a native French speaker, but I can learn how to speak French, right? And that's how I think about AI as well. We're never going to be able to say, "Hey, we were a native AI company because we were founded in 2025." That's something that you can't say truthfully to anybody. But you can certainly learn how to use AI in your organization. That's kind of the message that I would send to other SaaS founders, is that you've really got to think about it that way. Don't spend time thinking about, man, I'm not AI native, I'm going to fail. That's just not accurate. You can learn how to use AI both in your product and maybe also more importantly, across your organization.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I'm seeing this with actually a well-known SaaS company that I spoke to this week, that their product effectively enables you to build AI agents, right, visually. And what I learned from the person that I spoke to is actually their role was about making the company AI first internally in all the transformations of using AI internally. So yes, as a B2B software company, to your point, look at the roadmap if it's there now, or should be thinking about how do we become, let's say, AI first from one perspective, from a product for our customers to use it, but internally as well. I think there seems to be obviously this requirement that operationally companies need to be looking at how they can transform by using AI. And we're I don't know if we're behind the curve, personally, but we're starting to use certain tools and AI SDR, for instance. Not yet seeing the results, shall we say, but I think there's a lot of work that you've got to put into it and train it, and the jury is still out, and just kind of looking at other elements sort of beyond that. But I feel like there's a lot of more work to do to kind of transform SaaS stock, certainly internally, to become AI first as such, whilst we're not offering AI products to the customer. I guess kind of internally within Dreamdata, like how is the AI sort of like transformation? What perhaps has been implemented that you're seeing, that's working. I guess there'll be different tools and different things within different departments, but what are you seeing that's working and producing results for the company?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it depends on the department for sure. We just went through our budget process with our board and approvals and everything. And one of the more interesting conversations was headcount on the engineering team. How many more do we need versus how much should we actually just stock up on like AI tools there? Less of a conversation in terms of headcount on like go to market. And inherently on the sales, especially on like a sales team and the customer success team. I think everyone's using it. We work closely with Gemini actually. And so our company both uses that as our core LLM, and our product also uses that as our core LLM. And I shouldn't say core, I said it is the one that we use, just to be clear. If anybody's listening. But I think that on the sales side, I think you could see the typical use cases. First off, in our tech stack, like utilizing Gong, and that is probably one of the more common uses in terms of getting understanding of calls. It's how I review calls. I look at their AI summaries. I see a lot of people using it for kind of email writing. That I'm hesitant to do. I think for me personally, maybe I'm showing my age. There's a book, a very old book called How to Win Friends and Influence People. Maybe you're familiar with it, Dale Carnegie. In that book, he talks about a letter that he received, and on the bottom right-hand corner, there's this little note. It says, dictated, not read. And what that means is that somebody feels very important because they were able to dictate to someone else what they wanted to say to you, and they didn't even bother to read it, right? And so, but part of me feels like using AI in that respect, if you're trying to build a relationship with someone and they can tell that you used AI, it's like the new dictated but not read. I'm cautious around that. I think I like to build strong relationships with people. And so I tend to use it sparingly if I'm looking at myself personally. For writing, I like to write those things myself. But I know the sales team is using it for figuring out how to answer objections, things like that. We use a bot for questions on the product. Our system inherently has a ton of different features, and so we use that to answer questions quickly from both an internal support point of view, as well as we're utilizing it for external support.
If we go back to when you mentioned that you've been in the CEO role for 6 months, why did you want to take the job, leave CRO, go to CEO? Obviously, I imagine it's a great opportunity and challenge. And what have you learned over the last 6 months in the role? Is it as expected?
I've learned a lot. I've learned that there's a lot more to learn. I think that's probably what I would say. As expected, that's a I'm not sure if I had expectations. I think that's what I would say. First off, I took the role because it was an amazing opportunity. Dreamdata has built something very special from an internal culture point of view, from a product point of view, from how we help our customers. I joined because I tried to build something like Dreamdata at two separate companies, and I failed. And I saw that they had built it. Met the founders, and it was kind of the story was, look, we'd love you to come on as CRO, and if things go well, we would make that move. So I have an amazing relationship with Lars and Stefan, and the team overall has just been fantastic. So that's kind of why I was excited to join. And I've always worked with marketers, so I was also very passionate about that. I felt like they weren't getting what they deserved, both in the system they needed. Sales is a CRM. What does marketing have? But the promise of the CDP never really came through. So I was really passionate. I am really passionate about what we do, and I'm passionate about our customers. That's, I guess, I should say Dreamdata. Now, this switch from CRO to CEO might be more interesting. I think that I didn't really know what to expect. To be honest. We did kind of go immediately into a discussion around fundraising. And so that became a big focus. And that was, to me, is just one aspect of the job. a very important one. I mean, there's a guy, Sam Jacobs, maybe you know him, he runs Pavilion. He says, you know, one job is to not run out of cash. And like, yeah, that's really true. And so if you're early stages in startup and you want to scale, like, you know, funding allows you to do that. So that was important to accomplish. And again, very, very lucky to have gone through that, found great partners at Beachband. I would say the thing that I've had to get used to the most is the, I would say, ambiguity of relationships at this level of a company. I come from both a military family. My father was in the Army. I had cousins that were Marines, and another uncle was so bunch of like military background, which means that I'm hardwired for hierarchy, you know, and relationships are a bit more ambiguous at this level, both in your relationship with the board, your relationship as being a kind of higher CEO relationship with founders, you know, Lars. And again, we work together as colleagues. I don't think, you know, I don't see him necessarily as like someone that reports to me, but we're close. He technically is on my team. He is a founder, so I have deference to him. I really think of this, look, this is their company, and I'm just trying to steward it to success for them and for the customers. So he's a founder, he's on my team, he's on the board, which means that I report to him as well. And so it's it's kind of a unique situation. That's something that I have to get used to personally. And other people might be very used to that type of a situation, but I wasn't, and I'm still making sure I navigate it effectively and do a good job on that front. So that's one thing that stands out to me in terms of getting used to the job and the differences. I would say the pressures, you know, CRO can be a high pressure job. You know, you've got a target on your back every quarter. It's similar as CEO, and I guess also I'm technically CRO CEO. We're looking for a new hire right now for that position. But I think the pressures might be a little bit higher, but I feel similar to running that role. But of course I am biased.
Are you changing your routine to look after yourself anymore now that you're a CEO? Like, are you going to bed earlier, getting up earlier, more gym sessions, or whatever? Has anything changed from that perspective, or is it still the same personal kind of like maintenance?
I think it's the same. Maybe I should say a little bit less, honestly. I need to get back in the gym. So I do need to do more work on that. Yeah, like I said, it was a long summer of fundraising. But look, you know, my life, and I know some people may disagree with this, but you know, there are four things in my life. It's Leanne, it's Conlon, Jack, obviously my wife and two boys, and Dreamdata. And I'm totally comfortable with that. You know, I'm working in a place that kind of was my dream. This is a dream job for me, as lame as that may sound. You know, I was 14 thinking about how can because I'm 45. So when I was 14, 1994. And that is, when the internet, I see lots of parallels to the internet with AI. We can maybe talk about that, but it was such an exciting time for me. And I was like, man, I would love to just start and run a software company. And so I'm kind of living my dream, and it's a passion for me.
And so you with that journey from the CRO role to now CEO, so you've been part of the scaling journey, which is still continuing for Dreamdata. I guess so far from the journey that you've been part of, maybe what have been some of like the non-obvious challenges for scaling that Dreamdata has experienced, and you know, any decisions from that period that you would redo today?
No, you know, I think like AI is the biggest thing right now, and navigating that switch. You know, it was hard to say, hey, we're founded in 2018. Here's how we're tackling AI versus everyone looking at AI native. You know, though I will just say, like, there's what I've heard a lot of is concern around the durability of revenue from AI native companies. You know, there's a ton of innovation budgets out there. If the innovation budget doesn't become a permanent budget line item, what happens to that revenue? You know, we still know. I mean, I think I probably shouldn't call out specific examples, but there's some companies that were founded less than a year ago, and they're doing 100, 200 million revenue, and they've not experienced a real renewal cycle. And so there's a lot to learn once you get to 12 months and you say, hey, are these companies staying for more than a year? And so that needs to play out. Just going back to that kind of the parallel of the internet era versus AI. This is certainly as big, if not bigger, than the internet. But there were bumps. I remember going into college thinking this is going to be huge, and then like at year 3 of university, everything tanked. Nasdaq is tanked, and am I going to have a job when I graduate? Of course, things turned around for the better for everybody, I think. And maybe we're in that. Maybe we're yet to hit that phase of this. The promise. There's a huge promise that needs to be met. And, we think we can meet it. We think we can help AI meet that through the way that we've thought about giving, access to data for AI agents.
Finally, Nick, thinking about sort of advice to founders and CEOs for the next 12 months as we enter into 2026, what practical advice, would you give for founders that are looking to build predictable revenue engines across that period? Just kind of curious to hear.
Yeah. I mean, I think even though I'm in startups, I'm probably much more conservative, in terms of how I think about spending money. I even in the era of ZERP, when money was free, I still was hesitant. Some of those hesitant to spend a ton of money. Probably because of my experience with what I was saying about the internet era and looking for a job, as that was kind of a wishy-washy situation, living through a financial crisis in 2008, 2009. So I think that people need to focus on just building a good, profitable business, as opposed to thinking about how I hit insane growth numbers. It will come back to haunt you if you do that. Do something sustainable. That's how I would think about it. What else? I think what I said before about being SaaS versus AI native, keep that in mind. Like, you can successfully navigate that. That's going to be the biggest topic of conversation when you talk to investors or when you're talking to customers even. But ultimately, I do think there's a little bit of a problem right now, and we're guilty. Don't get me wrong. I think everyone's guilty, is that you were talking very much about a feature versus the results. And that's like the number one thing that they tell you in go-to-market is like, stop talking about features, start talking about how you're going to impact the business. And so if you're going out and saying, we're the AI native accounts payable or accounts receivable or any other, what's the value in that to the customer? Like, what is it going to mean to the bottom line for your customer? Because there's really only a couple things you can do, especially in MarTech. You either deliver more leads or you deliver cheaper leads, and you can squibble with the name of we call it a lead, but those are effectively the two things that you can do. Everything comes back down to that, and so just make sure you're drawing a parallel to what you do to actual ROI. I love CFOs. I've talked to more than I would refer to in my life in the last 2 years, and what that tells you is that everyone is scrutinizing any spend quite a lot, and so you'll also need to justify yourself to finance departments. So make sure you're thinking about those hidden stakeholders when you're thinking about how are you going to go to market, what are you going to say to customers.
Yeah, sage advice there. Thank you for sharing both of those bits of advice. 100% agree. Nick, thank you for joining the SaaS Revolution Show. Hopefully we'll get you back at a SaaS Doc. Before we started recording, I think you shared you've been to SaaS Doc in Dublin in 2019. So when we're now in Austin, that'll be in April, probably a little bit easier for you to travel to, but also the Dublin event is still a great show. So hopefully we can make that happen in 2026 and see each other in person. But thanks for being a great guest on the show. Really appreciate it. Nick Turner, CEO of Dreamdata.
Thanks, Alex. And I gotta say, congrats on 10 years. It's awesome. Keep it going.
Thanks, man. Planning another 10.
Thanks for listening to the SaaS Revolution Show. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review and follow the show. It helps more AI and B2B software founders to discover the podcast and keeps us bringing you the leaders who are shaping the future of the industry. For more resources and to join the SaaSdoc community, head to saasdoc.com.